wired to do something great. He was motivated, he was even organized. He had the energy necessary to get the job started, and that's when it happened. The novelty of the new thing wore off, the critics came out, and what began as something that brought the best out of him became an incomplete task that lived in his past. I think all of us could tell that story in one way or another. Times when we've been motivated to get something going and then we get a little bit worn out, maybe we get a little bit discouraged, and in the midst of it all, we just kind of call it a day. And what should have been done, what should have been completed, is left unfinished in our lives. And I'm sure there are those other times where we didn't exactly quit. We maybe wouldn't have said it that way, but in our hearts we know we've began to give less than our best. And what should have been done with enthusiasm to the best of our ability became something that was just not what it could have or should have been. And we could wonder, what could we have done to be more consistent in those times? But here's the great news today, the encouraging word. We don't have to wonder how to be consistent in those areas of life that matter the most. You see, God in His Word has given us some incredible examples of people who are just consistent day in, day out, seeing their projects through to completion. And one of the greatest examples we find in all of the Bible is found in the life of a man by the name of Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah's story is long and very interesting, and so I'll try and make our topic today very short and get to the point. Nehemiah was an incredible leader used by God to rebuild the walls that had been destroyed around Jerusalem. He led really just a group of captives, ordinary people, to do an extraordinary task. They completed the job. And so many thought as they went into it, it could not be done. In fact, this is the question people are asking. I'm quoting now from the Bible in Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 2. The question was this: what do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish which are burned? Nearly everybody doubted the plausibility of this project, but Nehemiah was consistent from beginning to completion. In 52 days, he did what others said that can never, ever be done. But here's the question I want us to deal with today. How did he persist in a project that became so incredibly difficult? How did he keep going? And as Nehemiah's story was unfolding here, he faced harsh and threatening critics. And I want you to hear how he responded to them, because we'll learn from his words for sure, but his words will actually give us some insight into his heart, the heart of this one who saw the project for God through to completion. As the critics came out, Nehemiah said this in Nehemiah 6 and verse 3. He said, "I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and come down to you?" As we break this down, we can see some steps really that allowed him to be so consistent. First thing we see here is he did it for the faith. I love the way Nehemiah said here, "I am doing a great work." He wasn't saying, "Hey, I'm a great worker." In fact, he wasn't even speaking about himself necessarily. What he was talking about here was the work itself was great, and it would then require his best. Nehemiah happened to believe that the greatness in any undertaking was not found in the task itself, but it was found in the one that gave the task. And in this case, Nehemiah knew he was doing what God wanted him to do. That's why he did it. Listen, as we find this concept as our foundation, it'll keep us going in life. I want you to know things that God calls all of us to do can be done for Him with this thought process. First of all, building a strong marriage, so vitally important. It's a great work. Why? Well, God gave us that work. Raising children that come to know the Lord and live for God. Even simple things like stewarding our finances and being the best managers of that which God has given that we can possibly be. All of that, when done with our heart, is a testimony that we believe there's value in those undertakings, not in the task, but in the one who's given us the task. Therefore, we do it with all of our heart. I remember when our church was just starting, I'd get down to the community center we were renting, and I'd clean it up, and a lot of you have heard those stories. And I remember setting those chairs up, making them as straight as they could possibly be. And back at that time, we had songbooks, and I'd put a songbook on every chair exactly in the middle, had to be exactly perfectly straight. And someone could have thought, boy, he sure is doing a lot of work for those people that are coming. But I want you to know, in my heart at that time, there was someone else I was thinking about, the Lord. And I couldn't think of anything more important than doing what I did for him. And the thought was, if the Lord is looking in, and certainly he is he going to find me doing this with all of my heart? And Nehemiah said this is a great work because it came from God. So he did it for the faith. But secondly, we see here clearly, he did it by faith. In other words, he wasn't trusting in himself. He was trusting in the power of God. He wasn't boasting when he said it was a great work. That term great emphasized the reality that the work was bigger than he was. Again, he wasn't saying I'm great. He was saying this work that God has called me to, it's immense. It's incredible. It is a great work, a work that is bigger than I am. Therefore, it will require the touch of God on my life. In fact, later in this chapter, as the work was coming to a close, the people looked at it and they analyzed it. I want you to listen to how they responded. In Nehemiah 6 and verse 16, the Bible says, "For they perceived that this was wrought of our God." In other words, they knew, just like Nehemiah knew, this was all done by the power of God. Let me share this with you. The most meaningful moments in life are those moments when you accomplish something that you know was bigger than you. And what that means is we let God do through us that which pleases him. So Nehemiah said, you know something? I'm going to do this for the faith. That'll be my mission, my motive. But I want to do it by faith. I want to trust God. And then finally, and I love this thought, he did it faithfully. Now, a moment ago, we heard of that time when the critics came to Nehemiah and he had to respond to them by saying, I'm doing a great work. But I want to share the very next verse with you. For the Bible there says this, "Yet they sent unto me 4 times after this sort, and I answered them after the same manner." The point is this. He didn't have to just make this stand once. It had to be done over and over and over. He was faithful. He just kept going. You see, he couldn't just keep going on that sense of euphoria that we sometimes have in a project when it's brand new and novel, nor could he just rely on that sense we get when a job is going really well and it seems as though it's smooth sailing. No, he had to do the job of just showing up consistently and of putting in the work and then of trusting God for the final outcome. There's so much to be learned from what we've considered today, but here's what I love about this. As great as Nehemiah was as a leader for God and at getting things done, this process we just outlined, it's one we can all follow. We can find really our great mission from the Lord and do what we do for the faith, do it for God. We can do it by faith, trusting him. And then we can all be faithful if we'll just determine to commit and to press on in that which God has given us to do. You see, we all have tasks the Lord has given us, and they're valuable because they've been given from God. So let's make sure that we press on and say, God, I want to do this with all of my heart, for all of your glory. I want to do what I do for you, by you, and I want it to be a work that you can take and use in the way that pleases you most.